Greetings. This is the commentary and sermonette on the song Elijah and the Chariot of Israel. I wrote this in probably 1981, maybe early 1982, and it would have come together in one shot. I just had the little tune and the little song, and this particular passage just seemed to go right with it. It's kind of a fun little tune and sound, and so I worked it up just in one shot. I think the first thing I'd want to do is encourage you, if you haven't looked at Elijah, the prophet of Israel, and Elisha, then who came after him, to look that passage over again. And to me, the most striking thing as I've reread some of this is Elisha was a servant to Elijah, and he was a very faithful servant. It came about when the Lord was about to take up Elijah by a whirlwind into heaven, that Elijah went with Elisha from Gilgal. And he said to Elisha, "Stay here, please, for the Lord has sent me as far as Bethel." But Elisha said, "As the Lord lives, and as you yourself live, I will not leave you." He repeats that several times through this. Elisha was given a calling from God. And in this instance, it was to serve Elijah and maybe learn from him. And he was faithful to that. And within himself, he recognized that it was till death do us part. Well, of course, when they went to the Jordan, it says that Elijah took off the mantle and he folded it and he struck it and he parted the Jordan River to where they crossed over on dry land. Whether it's that miracle, or if you keep reading, Elisha then did all kinds of miracles. These things are either myth, fable, or we have a God, a living God, who has total jurisdiction and power over all of the physical elements and laws that we live in now. I was reading a few months ago, I think it was Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego being thrown into the fiery furnace, and I was going to just open the Bible. I just want to read something in the Old Testament. And I opened it up, there it was, and I thought, I know what this is, and I almost was not going to read it, and I said, "No, Robin, just read the thing over, just read it." So I started reading it, that these men came out of that fire, and there wasn't even a smell of smoke on them. And everybody was astounded. And as I was laying there, the realization of God having full authority over all the physical laws that we exist in now, I just laid on my bed and said over and over, "God, please sink this in the depth of my soul, that this is who you are. Please help me to understand this. Sink this deep, 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 deep inside of me, that this is who you are. So whatever I face in life, my physical body going back to the dirt, whatever else might come, knowing that the God of the Bible, my Father in heaven, Jesus Christ the Son, has full authority over all of the laws that I'm living in right now." He says we'll have trouble in this world, but to be of good cheer, because he has overcome the world. He has promised us that he will raise us from the dead and give us an immortal body, an indestructible body, and place us in a new heavens and a new earth, where there's no more crying, no more pain, no more sin, and all that comes with sin. All of that will be forever and ever gone. That in his right hand are pleasures forever. These are either true promises in Jesus Christ that God has the authority to deliver, or he doesn't. So to continue on with this story, they crossed over on dry ground, the Jordan. Now there's probably a lot of symbolism there that I'm missing. And at that point Elijah said to Elisha, "Ask what I shall do for you before I'm taken from you." And Elisha said, "Please let a double portion of your spirit be on me. And he said, you've asked a hard thing. Starting to get rained on a little bit. Nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken from you, it shall be so. I got to do this. Hope this is just for a minute. But if you don't see me, it won't be so. So as they were going along talking, behold, there appeared a chariot of fire. They're still just going along. You never know when the Lord's going to show up. Whether it's in our churches and our church services, or whether it's in our life. You never know when the Lord's going to show up. We know He's going to show up, you just don't know when. And they were going along talking. Behold, there appeared a chariot of fire, having horses of fire, which separated the two of them. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Elisha saw it and cried out, my father, the chariot of Israel and its horsemen. Probably Jesus himself. And Elisha, he saw him no more. Elijah was gone. If you read the rest of that story, some of the prophets, they wanted to look for Elijah. They thought maybe he had been transported to the top of a mountain or a valley. And Elisha said, no, he's gone. But he still let him go and let him go look over his objections. But it'd be nice to read the rest of that account, and also then Elisha's ministry that started. The thing that I think I want to hit on here just for a moment is that when the chariot of Israel came, they were separated. He separated them. I've got a song called You're Nice to Know. One verse says, when I find myself all alone with realities that can only be my own, you're right at my side, shoulder to the load. Oh, that's nice to know. Even though we're faithful to someone, whether it's man and wife, whether it's a ministry that you feel the Lord has called you to, whatever, there are times we will be separated, and we are by ourselves. No one can fully enter into the sorrows we might experience, and no one can fully enter into our joys either. That's why I have an article. It's called The Necessity of Spiritual Independence. One reason that I have been so intense in my seeking of God, even in all of my failures, not knowing how intense this thing may become of life, whether it's the amount of suffering or pain that I may enter into, I want to have a well of knowledge and or relationship with God to be able to draw from, to where I can be strengthened to endure to the end. As we enter different chapters in life, we got to figure out, how can I spend time in the Bible, and how can I spend time praying to God? Where can it be? Well, sometimes a chapter in our life, it may be we get up really early in the morning, we have a season like that. Other times it might be late in the afternoon, or we've got to reassess what the demands of life are on us, and where we give God not just leftovers of our energy in our day, but somehow some prime time. I'm not saying I do that, but I'm saying that should be the goal. And it takes discipline. Well, the reason for that discipline is to build resource so we can be somewhat prepared, if possible, for the storms that will come our way. So one reason this is also important, there's a passage in 2 John, it's a little one-chapter book, where he says, watch yourselves. It's an imperative, a command. You watch yourselves. This is something you do for yourself. You pay attention to yourself. Like, watch over your heart with all diligence. It's our responsibility to be careful that sin is not rearing its head, or we're given places where Satan can have inroads by making decisions that are anti-God. Watch yourselves that you might not lose what we have accomplished or worked for. And I think that might be talking about the teaching and the growth and whatever. Watch yourselves that you might not lose what we have accomplished, but that you may receive a full reward. Well, if you don't watch yourself, and you don't keep living by the standard to which you have attained, and you start backsliding, going backwards, you're going to go forward or you're going to go back. That it is possible, if we might gain a full reward by being faithful to the end, it's possible if we're not, that we may not gain a full reward. Now what that means and how that works out, I cannot tell you. I do not know. I don't know it for myself. I don't know it for you. I do know that faithfulness to whatever God has called us to, especially where we know His revealed will, if we endure to the end and remain faithful to the end, even though it might be a tough slog going through it, that we will be rewarded for that and very pleased and happy that we did endure unto the end. I keep using that phrase, but I don't know what else to say, that we've been faithful to the end. These are matters that we cannot do for anyone else. We are only responsible for our own self. We will be separated from all of the relationships that we now have had. And just think in your own life, there are things you've passed through, and jobs, ministries, people, and you're not going to see them again until Judgment Day. That's the way all of our life is. So whatever the commitments are and the responsibilities we have, if we remain faithful as we go through chapter by chapter by chapter, that's something only we can do, and we've got to decide within ourselves. And I think one of the most helpful things about that would be you decide beforehand to where then the door is shut to other options. For example, marriage, it's until death do you part, unless there's adultery involved or desertion on the part of the other party. But as far as we're concerned ourselves, we are to be faithful to that partner physically, and we're not to leave, and we're not to drive them out either. And so even if we do that, when it comes to the Judgment Day, we will be separated, and we'll give an account for ourselves to just the Lord Himself, one-on-one. As a believer, it'll be one-on-one. It's the believer's judgment, and we'll either be rebuked or rewarded. And one way I like to try to think of this, and this may be delusion, but if I remain faithful to the end, there may be a lot of sin that's gone along the way, and I will hang my head in shame when I stand before the Lord for my lack of self-control, my lack of righteousness, my lack of 1 Corinthians 13, being patient, being kind, not being arrogant, boastful, braggart, not seeking my own. You go through that list. I've violated it so many times, so I will hang my head for those violations. But I also believe that if I have remained faithful to the primary call, the primary purpose, the primary ministry, and I was faithful to the end, that will be rewarded in ways that are beyond our imagination now. We will be so happy that we hung in there. So my charge to me and to you is endure to the end. Keep pressing forward. Keep doors closed that Satan can enter into, which means we don't entertain thoughts or decisions that are definitely anti-God. And we have to be in His Word to know what is God or what is anti-God as much as possible. Lord help us all. Lord help you. Lord help me. So, like I always say,
you.